All right, we're going to tackle a really complex topic today, but maybe not in the way you're thinking. See, this isn't about arguing morals. Instead, think of this as a pure thought experiment. We're going to look at the illegal drug market simply as a system that could, maybe, be redesigned. We're talking about the economics of control.
And that brings us right to the central question, the one that kicks this whole thing off. It's a bit provocative, sure, but it gets to the absolute heart of the issue. For decades, the goal has been suppression. Just stop it. But what if we started from a totally different place? What if we just accept that some level of use is going to happen and then ask, okay, what's the smartest, least harmful way to manage that reality?
Okay, now take a look at these numbers, because this is where things get kind of wild. This is data for England and Wales, the social and economic costs of illegal drugs. We're talking healthcare, crime, lost productivity, the whole shebang. That adds up to a staggering £20 billion a year. Now, the illegal market itself, it's worth about half that, around $10 billion. So think about that. We are spending £2 dealing with the consequences for every £1 that the entire illegal market is actually worth. That's the awkward number that just forces you to ask, is there a better way to do this?
So, here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we're going to follow the money in the illegal system. Then, we'll sketch out what a regulated market could look like, and we'll tackle the real-world risks head-on. After that, we'll see what we can learn from other industries, and finally, we'll put it all on one final balance sheet.
All right, first things first. That £10 billion, where's it actually going? I mean, if you want to design a new system, you've got to take apart the old one and see how it ticks, right?
And this chart, this just blows a huge misconception right out of the water. We tend to picture, farmers in distant countries, but the actual raw production, the price at the farm gate, it's a tiny, tiny slice of the final price. We're talking less than 3%. So what about the other 97%? That's the value captured by the criminal supply chain, the people who move it, process it, and sell it.
Let's put a hard number on that tiny slice. Out of a £10 billion market, the value of the raw product itself is only around £300 million. So the vast, vast majority of the money isn't going to producers. It's the profit that funds criminal networks, violence, and corruption. A lot of it right here at home.
Okay, so if that's the current system, what would a new one actually look like? Let's try to build it, piece by piece, as a hypothetical.
Now, a regulated system is not a free-for-all, not even close. It actually introduces a whole new set of costs, but these are the costs of control. We're talking about quality testing and making sure products are standardized and safe. We're talking about licensed distributors and retailers who can be audited, and regulatory bodies to oversee everything. These are all things that just don't exist in a criminal market.
So here's the real game changer. When you strip out that massive criminal risk freemium and replace it with a legitimate supply chain, the total cost of the system just plummets from about $10 billion down to a pretty conservative estimate of $2 to $3 billion. And look at the destination column. The money stops flowing to criminal networks and instead goes into the legitimate economy, jobs, regulation, and taxes.
But of course, let's be real, it's not that simple. A huge change like this comes with massive challenges and really valid questions, and any credible thought experiment has to face those head-on. And this is a big one, a really big one. You can't just evaporate a £10 billion informal job market overnight and not expect consequences. A lot of the people involved aren't some criminal mastermind. They're often vulnerable, maybe coerced, or just trying to fund their own habit. Ignoring the human side of this is where these kinds of policies can fail.
So a realistic, kind of grown-up balance sheet has to include the costs of transition. That means seriously expanding treatment, offering retraining and real ways out, and protecting the most vulnerable people caught up in the system. You'd even want to create pathways into the new legal jobs where that makes sense. The source figures this would cost between $500 million and $1.5 billion a year for about 10 years. And that's not a failure of the plan. That's the price of replacing chaos with control.
Okay, here's the other major question you're probably thinking. If you make something legal and then you tax it, won't a new, cheaper black market just pop up to undercut it? It's a totally fair question. And to answer it, we can actually look at other industries.
The good news is we don't have to invent the wheel here. The UK has decades of experience regulating other products that are legal but carry risk, and the choices we've made with things like tobacco and prescription meds offer some pretty powerful lessons.
And this comparison is key. With tobacco, the main tool is high taxes to discourage people from smoking. And it works, to a degree, but it also creates a huge price gap that a black market is more than happy to fill. The pharmaceutical model, though, is different. It uses things like levies and automatic clawbacks, so if the social costs from a drug go up, the industry automatically has to pay more. It aligns their financial incentives with public health, instead of just playing a constant game of whack-a-mole with smugglers.
Here's another really smart design choice. You require the supply to be domestic. Making the product inside the UK isn't a moral point. It's a practical one. It's about control. It makes inspection way simpler and cuts down the incentive for smuggling. And the crazy thing is, the illegal market already figured this out. The UK cannabis market has mostly moved from imported stuff to stuff that's grown here, just because it's less risky. So the question isn't if it can be produced here, it's who gets to control that production.
So let's pull all of this together. It's time for the final balance sheet. Let's put the system we have now, the chaotic one, right next to this hypothetical controlled one and just see how they stack up.
And here it is. The current system costs us $20 billion in social harm while funneling $10 billion to criminals, all to achieve the goal of suppression. A regulated system, on the other hand, would have a much smaller financial footprint, maybe $3 to $4 billion a year. It's not going to eliminate all harm, no one's pretending it would, but it would reduce it. And the money would go towards regulation, support services, and legitimate businesses. The primary goal just completely flips from suppression to control.
And that's really the ultimate takeaway when you boil this whole thought experiment down. The choice we actually face isn't a simple one between people use drugs and people don't use drugs. It's a choice between continuing with a chaotic, violent, and incredibly expensive system that we can't really control, or designing a new one that aims for control, aims for harm reduction, and is a whole lot less expensive.
You know, to keep spending billions of pounds trying to suppress the symptoms of a multi-billion-pound industry that we refuse to actually regulate, well, the source material concludes that this isn't really a question of morality. It's a question of design. And right now, it seems the system is just poorly designed.